I'm Teresa Carraggio, and this is Third Paradigm. Today, I'll be reading my script from thirdparadigm.substack.com, which is an excellent place to comment, many of which I'll be responding to in this episode, which is titled Aryan Sky Gods. On my video, Year of the Goddess, the comment threads were off the hook, the most charming of which was Julia Schoolafish, who said, "As it so happens, I married a goddess, so I guess that's a tick for polytheism." Then Mark Alexander replied, "In 2012, I also married what I thought was a goddess, but she turned out to be Eris, the goddess of strife and discord, so I had to leave in 2020. But Julius and his goddess are coming up on 50 years. Lucky goddess." My youngest goddess, Cassandra, is in Crete right now, which may be the place that the original Cassandra gained her powers of prophecy when her mother left her in the temple overnight as a very, very young child, and snakes licked her ears. My daughters are doing their Mamma Mia sister trip without their Mia Mama, obviously. So Cassandra gained many new fans with her Fuck Israel sticker, including Philip Malika, Fadi Lama, Isaac Middle, and Julius, who referred to her the Max Egan video on evil against integrity. This starts with a clip of a Bernie Sanders rally in which he's speaking and a woman is hanging a Free Palestine sign from a balcony. And when the police start wrestling it from her, the crowd notices and starts booing. And at first, I think they're booing the woman. And it's only when they all start raising their fists and chanting Free Palestine that I realize they're booing the police. And I don't know why, but that hit me hard. I just started sobbing. I was so relieved to see that public display of solidarity. Max also shows an Irish rap band called Kneecap, and they were at Coachella, where we were in the same location a week later. They, in their background, had Fuck Israel, Free Palestine, and I am going to have to see if I can get tickets before they sell out, which is definitely not what they did. Julius also let me know that Catch a Dragon had mentioned me in his post, and so we've been having a great conversation with more recommendations than I can keep up with. One of those was someone named John Lamb Lash, who has a book called Not in His Image, and also a playlist that I've looked at called Sem versus Soph. I will post at thirdparadigm.substack.com one of the videos in that, which is a Hebrew woman talking about how they are a race of gods. It is amusing in an infuriating sort of way. And while we're getting our blood pressure up, Teresa L. has posted Every Accusation is a Confession, which is a review of Stephen Heiner of Palestine Bookshelf doing his review of the Leaked Israel Project's 2009 Global Language Dictionary, put together by Frank Luntz for Zionist apologists. It tells them how to frame the discussion to make it more palatable for those who might object to a little genocide between friends. Stephen is fittingly outraged and sarcastic and does a great job debunking this pile of junk. This phrase of Stephen's that Teresa picks out is key to decoding. Every accusation is a confession. Who were the airy ones? There was another comment thread by Crow of Nevermore Media that was really interesting. Crow is an anarchist with a degree in anthropology, and he really delves into the linguistic cues of how we got to this place of rule over others. Along with another commenter named Loa, I was hoping he would turn that into his own post, which he has. So I link that and another one that is fascinating called How Beer Enslaved the World. At the same time, Catch a Dragon recommended Asha Logos on the Aryan Exodus from Steppe to Throne. So I'll be drawing on both of those along with Merlin's stone, When God Was a Woman, and also my own biblical narrative and looking at those parallels with that, which is always my best guess until I get new information. Right now, my working hypothesis is that the usurpers come from the same tiny inbred genetic pool and that their playbook goes back 5 millennia. The language looms. Crow quotes David's Graeber and Wengrow in The Dawn of Everything on the Aryans. One of the things that Graeber and Wengrow do in The Dawn of Everything is to vindicate the work of archaeologist named Maria Gimbutas. She is best known for the theory that the original cultures of Europe were peaceful goddess worshippers, but that they were overrun by Aryan invaders from the Caspian steppes. In The Dawn of Everything, the two Davids write, "If you read the books of Gimbutas, such as the goddesses and gods of old Europe, you quickly realize that their author was attempting to do something which, until then, only men had been allowed to do, to craft a grand narrative for the origins of Eurasian civilization. She argues that, in some ways, though certainly not all, the old Victorian story about goddess-worshipping farmers and Aryan invaders was actually true." Following the linguistics, Crow quotes from The Loom of Language in 1943 that Semitic languages have different root characteristics than Aryan languages like Sanskrit, Latin, and Russian, or English, French, Spanish, Italian, Polish, and all the Germanic languages. Crow adds that your language was probably called an Aryan language up until 1945. That, of course, is the same year when World War II ended, smearing the Germans with the accusation of Aryan purity and making the word or the search for Aryan origins anti-Semitic. What's air is fair, skin deep. From Crow and Merlin Stone, I learned that Iran means land of the Aryans. Crow adds, "Don't believe me? Take it away, Zephyrus." ChatGTP. The name Iran has ancient roots and is derived from the term Aryan, which means land of the Aryans or noble land. The term Aryan originates from the Proto-Indo-Iranian word Arya, meaning noble or honorable. In Avestan, the sacred language of Zoroastrianism, there's a term that means the legendary homeland of the Aryans, a central concept in Zoroastrian cosmology. In old Persian inscriptions, such as those of Darius the Great, the term Arya is used to describe the Persian peoples and their lineage. Loa and I both had problems with the terms Proto-Indo-Iranian or Proto-Indo-European, which implied that there was no one original to those lands before the foreign conquerors came. If the conquerors called themselves Aryan and invented the language, can we take their word for it that that means noble or honorable? Or does it mean violent asshole motherfuckers? And I'm using that as a technical term because this is all very edible. Crow distinguishes these characteristics for this cult or culture. 1, they originated in the Potomac-Caspian steppes north of the Black Sea. 2, they were not the first to domesticate horses, but they were among the earliest major groups to integrate horses into transport, warfare, and expansionism. 3, they were very likely the first people to use horse-drawn wheeled vehicles. 4, in addition to horses, they herded cattle, sheep, goats, and pigs. 5, they practiced agriculture, including grain agriculture. 6, they were wool workers. 7, they practiced metallurgy, including bronze working. 8, they worshipped a god called Dias, which meant Sky Father. 9, they made alcohol from honey, which means that they must have been beekeepers. 10, they were patriarchal. Their kinship structure was patrilineal, descent was traced through the father's line, and patrilocal, where wives joined the husband's household. Deus ex macho. In this video that was linked by Crow, that is in the Substack, the word for sky god, Deus, is linked to Zeus in Roman mythology, the Vedic father in Sanskrit, and Deus in Latin. It draws on David Anthony's The Horse, the Wheel, and Language, from which Crow's article features an extensive quote. From this video, the Pontiac steppes are plains, leaving vast expanse of sky in which to imagine Pater God. The people may have been entirely nomadic, using their wheels to haul proto-mobile homes. They used horses to herd their cattle and sheep. This gave them a wide range to spread their language. But this contradicts that they would be grain farmers, which doesn't mix with grazing herbivores, and beekeepers needing a settled place. It also indicates a peaceful tribe that could be traveling in bands with no reason to conquer cities for which they had no use. Love like burning lava. Merlin Stone's evidence in the Aryan-derived religions is that God lived on a mountain as a thunderous volcano. She suspects they may have been Luvians or Levites from Anatolia who became Levites in the Torah. The word lava has the same root as does love and live, as Loa points out. Merlin writes, "Light to the Aryans may have been the blinding light of volcanic eruptions, later symbolized by the light of their ever-present fire sacrifices. The light of the astral bodies, especially the sun, the lightning bolts of their storm god, perhaps the lightness of their own skin color as compared with the Mediterranean peoples, and the realm of eternal light where the spirits of the Aryan dead were supposed to reside. The gracious fathers dwell in glowing light, light primeval. Varuna, which seems to be another name of Deus Pater, has the task of performing daily sacrifices to bring the shining sun out of the deep dark space under the earth. And the video on Deus Pater tells me that the word sacred means worthy to be sacrificed. And I think that's an essential clue for looking at how the Aryans see the rest of us, which is worthy only in mass quantities. Charming killers. Perhaps more specifically, the Aryan assholes may have come from Kizzuwatna, where a specific dialect of Luwili was spoken, next to the silver mines of the Taurus Mountains. Wikipedia states, in the famous Battle of Kadesh, which was 1274 BCE, Kizzuwatna supplied troops to the Hittite king. As master equestrians, some of the first in the area south of the Caucasus region, they provided the horses, which were later favored by King Solomon, and allowed the more aggressive use of the Hittite chariot than their Egyptian and Assyrian rivals were able. The Kizzuwatna were master craftsmen, mining experts, and blacksmiths, being the first to work black iron, which is understood to have been iron of meteoric origin, into weapons such as maces, swords, and warheads for spears. Their location in the mineral-rich Tarsus Range gives them ample materials from which to work. Here they also, I learned from Merlin Stone, established a center of scribes who wrote mythologies in Hittite, Hurrian, and Akkadian, while using hieroglyphics in their own writing for votive rituals and royal monuments. They may have been a separate priestly caste because incantations ascribed to them have still not been translated. So here we have all the elements of the northern invaders: horses, chariots, metal weapons, and a warring, masculine battle axe culture. In addition, they had myth-making, spells, charms, incantations, hexes, and rituals to bend the will of the god to their own. And doesn't this give a different meaning to the word charming? The bloody sacrifice of the priest is distinctly different from the priestess rituals, who discern the future and advise on actions, but don't presume to control goddess. The ark reposed. The northern Aryans viewed themselves as a race superior to the people whom they had conquered and ruled. Aryan is Iranian, and Iran was their long-term stomping grounds. The Iranian scriptures of the Avesta was written at the same time as the priestly text of the Torah, which is 600 BCE, according to scholars. They include a similar creation myth in 7 acts that culminates with the creation of a single man. The first woman in the Pahlavi text is called Je, queen of all horror demons. In this creation myth, Je has sex with the devil so she might afterwards defile all women, who in turn would defile all men. Since women are subservient to the devil, they are the cause of defilement in men. So this is like the story of Adam's first wife, Lilith, who does not agree to sexual subservience. And I have bought a retelling of Lilith's story, and I'll be giving a review when I read it. In another similarity, a man called Yaima is warned by a god of a great flood and told to bring animals in pairs into a fortress. The same flood myth is in Sumer, even with no mountain for an ark to land on, as their story says it does. Mount Ararat, where Noah's ark is said to have landed, is 17,000 feet tall at the eastern tip of Turkey, close to Iran and Russia, between the Erex River that joins the Caspian Sea. This is where the historically attested Indo-Europeans are known to have entered Anatolia. That could put the Aryans in the Caspians by a tall mountain where they could easily move into land ruled by Aryans, Iran, and also launch invasions by land and sea. A name of one's own. So the name Iran comes from the Aryan rulers and conquerors, to whom the actual inhabitants were just soldiers and slaves. We know slaves comes from Slav, and what's the relationship between soldiers and sold? But Wikipedia tells me that the name Persia also refers to Cyrus the Great, another conqueror, and the peoples that he was thought to come from. And then the country's name goes from one foreign ruler to another. So here's a tasty tidbit. The modern-day ethnonym, Persian, was typically used as a demonym for all Iranian nationals, regardless of whether or not they were ethnic Persians. This terminology prevailed until 1935, when, in an international gathering, the Iranian king officially requested that foreign delegates begin to use the endonym Iran in formal correspondence. So what's a demonym? From the ancient Greek demos, people, tribe, and name, or gentilic, from Latin gentilis, of clan or gens, it's a word that identifies a group of people, inhabitants, residents, natives, in relation to a particular place. So demon and demos, gentilis and Gentiles, are the natives, the indigenous population, not to be confused with Aryan, Iranian, the word to be used when addressing the king. But Iran, Persia had another name. In the Iranian tradition, the world is divided into 7 circular regions, or karshevars, separated from one another by forests, mountains, or water. 6 of those regions flank a central one, called Zunaras in New Persian, which probably means self-made, not resting on anything else. It was equal in size to all the rest combined and surpassed them in prosperity and fortune. Originally, only Zunaras was inhabited by humans, which also hosted the Iranian home. Interesting. Elite or a light-skinned dominance. In a brilliant synopsis of much research, Zach of Ashologos writes, "Far from a fleeting ripple, this was a tidal wave of consistent triumph, propelled by the martial prowess and sheer competence of steppe-born warriors who didn't merely tread across Egypt, Mesopotamia, Anatolia, and beyond. They conquered and ruled, reshaping civilizations through structural elite dominance. In Anatolia, this saga stretches to the dawn of recorded history, etched by Indo-European giants like the Luvians and the Phrygians, their language and legacies carved into the land stones, long before Turkic tribes ever neared, with the Galatians, fierce Celtic warriors whose presence in the area was recognized at least as far back as 300 BCE, serving as a later fascinating strand of the larger Aryan thread. Proficient bands of these masters of war, from the Hyksos seizing Egypt's throne with ruthless precision, to the Mitanni commanding Mesopotamia's Aryans with Vedic authority, and the Hittites forging Anatolia's might through strategic brilliance, wielded power that belies their numbers. I would summarize much of the debate over the term Aryan in this way. Premise 1 is that the Aryans were a superior race of blue-eyed, white-skinned, blonde, or red-headed conquering northerners. Premise 2 is that white people want to find out the Aryan origins to say they're descended from that superior race. Premise 3, racial superiority is bad and led to the Nazis. Therefore, there were no Aryans, and the search for them is racist and anti-Semitic. I see the Aryans not as a race, but an inbred dynasty of master manipulators. They have no relationship to the people who stayed behind in their land of origin, other than physical and linguistic. They are unfettered by morality and ethics, which makes them inferior to all settled people with a conscience. They embody the masculine virtues of strength and determination, but in service to the ego, rather than the feminine, making that into violence. The Aryans convinced other violent and estranged men with weapons, chariots, and horses that they were sky gods, or that the sky gods answered to them. Because of their complete lack of honor and rituals of rape and torture that bound the perpetrators to them and against the indigenous communities, they were able to conquer settled communities and convince men that conquest and domination with loyalty to them was preferable to serving the interest of mothers and children. They had a complete lack of scruples and weren't limited by human feeling. This gave them a tremendous advantage over people hampered by morality. Irony or inversion. To conclude, I'll go back to that phrase, every accusation is a confession. Merlin concludes her chapter with a comment. If this hypothesis bears up under further investigation, we must certainly view the events of the Second World War and the atrocities enacted upon the Hebrew people of the 20th century by the self-styled Aryans of Nazi Germany, not only as tragic, but ironic. So she looks at German archaeologists just before World War I, finding that the Hittite language was Nasili and Nessa or Nasa, their first capital. The first Hittite invaders may have been Nessians or Nasians. The Hebrew word for prince is Nasi. These are clues that the Nazis were a Rothschild brainchild. The ruthless Rothschilds are the current iteration of the inbred Aryan Sky Gods. The Hittites had been their foot soldiers then, and the Nazis under their agent Hitler became the new destroyer of cities, namely the German agricultural cities. My motives for finding their origin is to expose and undo this original psyops, and I will continue to unravel these threads in future episodes. And in the meantime, here are two that are related: the master baiters and Hebrews in Egypt, slaves or masters. Thank you for watching.